Carrier Dome if Zion actually plays. Plus, new reaction from Tim Legler as he breaks down the issues between James Harden, Chris Paul, and NBA referee Scott Foster after the Rockets lost in Los Angeles last night.
This is SportsCenter.
It is Friday night. We've got several big games in the NBA and college hoops to preview. But, Keith, we must begin with the incredibly serious news that broke earlier today from the NFL.
Yeah, Sage, no matter which perspective one is seeing this from, it is extraordinarily disturbing. The owner of the New England Patriots facing misdemeanor charges tonight of solicitation of prostitution as part of a human trafficking investigation and raid near Palm Beach, Florida. The developing story on SportsCenter, quote, the video that we obtained, it shows the act that took place on every gentleman. The police chief of Jupiter, Florida, explaining that among at least 25 of arrest warrants for solicitation already or soon to be issued, one has on it the name Robert Kenneth Kraft. 10 Florida spas have been closed, several arrested for sex trafficking, women brought to this country and forced into virtual slavery, all of it captured by cameras hidden within, including at the Orchids of Asia Day Spa in Jupiter, where police allege Robert Kraft broke the law. There are 2 charges against him. He has not been arrested nor arraigned. Details of the charges will not be released until next week, though we are beginning to get a picture of what may happen in the immediate future. Details of what we know now from ESPN's Jeremy Schaap.
Just 3 weeks ago, this was Robert Kraft. Now he's been charged by the police in Florida with 2 misdemeanor counts of solicitation of prostitution.
We're as equally stunned as everybody else.
Kraft is being charged after a months-long investigation into massage parlors and so-called day spas on Florida's Atlantic coast. So far, nearly 200 warrants have been served, many tied to human trafficking.
Obviously, our concern in this investigation centers around our possibility of victims of human trafficking.
The authorities say the Kraft was observed twice visiting a strip mall spa in Jupiter, Florida called Orchids of Asia, and that there's video evidence supporting the charges against him.
The question was, does the video contain Mr. Kraft inside receiving the alleged acts? The answer to that is yes.
Over the course of the last 6 months, the authorities surveilled spas and massage parlors from Palm Beach to Orlando. Vero Beach Police Chief David Curry said this week that the prostitutes involved are victims. Some of them may tell us they're okay, he said, but they're not. If convicted, Kraft could spend up to 60 days in jail on each of the 2 counts.
Jeremy Schaap for us. Full denial from Robert Kraft. No room for both sides to be right. A spokesperson issuing this statement. We categorically deny that Mr. Kraft engaged in any illegal activity. Because it is a judicial matter, we will not be commenting further, end quote. The big picture here is, of course, the international human trafficking, forced prostitution, and such. The smaller picture also concerns us, and about the football part, I want to turn to our Adam Schefter. Let's break this in half, Adam. What, if anything, is the NFL entitled to do to Robert Kraft right now, tonight?
Keith, I don't know that we've ever seen the NFL take action against an individual for soliciting a prostitute before. Now, the details of these charges are going to be released next week, and we'll learn more about the details at that point in time. Right now, the NFL is monitoring the situation. It's aware of the situation. We know what kind of action it's taken against Robert Kraft's Patriots organization in the past for different types of transgressions. This is an altogether different matter, almost unprecedented in the NFL world, where we rarely have seen anything like this particular case with a man as powerful as Robert Kraft being charged with soliciting a prostitute. Again, those charges will be detailed next week. We'll learn more. We'll see how the NFL proceeds, but clearly it could be a violation of the NFL's personal conduct policy, and we know that owners are held to higher standards. All we have to do is go back to the drug arrest of Jim Irsay, who basically was suspended from the NFL, fined $500,000. So we'll see how the league proceeds here.
Do you know what the thresholds they are considering would be? What could the NFL do to him later? What had to happen before they would actually act?
Well, Keith, I think that the NFL will be slow moving in this particular case to make sure that it takes its time to get it right. And again, we have to see what the charges are. And at that point in time, the NFL can then decide whether or not action is warrantable at that point in time. But if it is, you certainly would think that Robert Kraft could be facing a fine, which wouldn't mean all that much to him, and a potential suspension in the form of discipline. We'll see what the league decides to do with this, Keith.
Adam Schefter on the first part of this story. Great thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Keith.
We will return to this extraordinary story throughout the hour, including the beginning of the picture of when and where the police and Robert Kraft might be in the same place in the next few days, and past words from Kraft himself about his demand that those who work for him in football or outside of it maintain integrity and character. Sage?
College basketball news, Keith. Syracuse head coach Jim Boeheim will coach tomorrow's game against #1 Duke. It'll come 3 days after he struck and killed a pedestrian on a dark highway in Syracuse, New York. 51-year-old Jorge Jimenez had exited his car after a separate accident and was trying to get to safety when he was struck by Boeheim's SUV. Boeheim has completely cooperated with the investigation, and police are calling it a tragic accident. Syracuse athletic director John Wildhack released this statement today on the decision to have Boeheim coach. Quote, "I know that Coach Boeheim's players gain strength from him, just as he gains strength from his players. Our entire community gains strength from each other. With this in mind, and after thoughtful consideration, I have respectfully decided that Coach Boeheim will resume his coaching duties later today and will coach in tomorrow night's game against Duke. We continue to extend our deepest sympathies to the Jimenez family as they continue to mourn this tragic loss." End quote. Mark Schwartz is with us live now from Syracuse, New York. And Mark, this story reaches far beyond basketball. And that's why nobody would have been surprised if Boeheim was not going to be coaching tomorrow. Instead, he will be there when they host #1 Duke. What has the reaction been locally to the news that Boeheim will be on the sidelines?
Well, Sage, I can tell you that for the last 2 hours and until moments ago, Jim Boeheim was leading practice behind that banner with his Syracuse basketball team. As John Wildhack pointed out, he returned to the team today, and he will coach against Duke tomorrow. And I think there's some important things that you can understand in John Wildhack's statement. Right now, Jim Boeheim, a career basketball coach, needs to be with his players to get him strength right now. And his players need to be with him for the same reason. And the community is going to get strength from seeing Boeheim coaching a huge basketball game tomorrow. I was on the street today, and one of the things that was said to me was really profound and I thought poetic, and it explains the importance of Jim Boeheim here. And it was simply this: when something like this happens to him, it happens to all of us.
And one thing everyone has made very clear is that Boeheim has said how heartbroken he is about what happened on Wednesday night. Staying on the court, Syracuse has a chance to sweep the #1 team in the land tomorrow. Duke was a little banged up the first time, but Zion Williamson, he did up 35-10. Still no word yet on whether Zion will play after the shoe debacle that we're looking at right now Wednesday night. Mark, what are you hearing right now about his status 24 hours out?
Well, you know, Duke is not saying right now whether he will play tomorrow, but there's still a chance that he will. Coach Krzyzewski is saying all the right things, that we're not in any kind of panic mode. We're 23-3. We have the best record in the country. We're going to make the NCAA tournament. We have to do what is best for Zion. But I was at that game Christmas Day, Sage, in Oakland, where LeBron James tore a muscle in his groin. And, you know, LeBron pointed out, and I saw too, that the mechanism in that injury was similar, in that Zion's body went one way and the rest of his body went the other way. And, you know, LeBron realized what kind of torque that put on his body. So Zion and LeBron are both built in a way that most of us can't relate to. Zion Williamson has a mild knee sprain. Chances are he will return sooner than later. But tomorrow against Syracuse may be a little early to expect, Sage. We'll know at game time.
Okay, again, Syracuse beat them in their first meeting. Duke is the only team in the country that's undefeated, though, on the road. We'll see if they can make it 7-0 tomorrow. 6 Eastern here on ESPN. Mark Schwartz, thank you.
Still to come on this edition of SportsCenter, the Rockets versus the Ref. Tim Legler breaks down the beef between James Harden, Chris Paul, and NBA official Scott Foster after last night's contentious loss to LeBron and the Lakers. Also, baseball's initial pitch clock plan is now set. Details inside how the timer will be implemented.